My name is Nemanja Sonero, and welcome to He Who Builds Bridges podcast.
I am really excited to restart this podcast as I began, I believe, 2 years ago, and then there was COVID, and there's so many things happening, and I promised myself I will reboot and begin again. And it's really a pleasure to do that with a very special guest, a friend, a colleague, with whom I will share soon more information about the coming Haka event. But before that, I want to say, dear brother Kane, welcome. Kia ora.
Kia ora, brother.
Welcome to this episode, and welcome to this space which I want to create where we can share, we can express fully, we can be ourselves, but really connect man to man in various ways and through our gifts and through, in this case today specifically, even more than anything, the power and the beauty of traditions, of your Maori traditions. So I want to first allow you to share your name, full name, and where do you come from. So maybe we begin with that, and welcome.
I tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa e noho ora mai I roto te kainga maha. Ko Kane Harnett taku ingoa no Ngāti Kahu te iwi. My name is Kane Harnett Mutu. I am a indigenous Maori from New Zealand. My tribe is Ngāti Kahu, which is at the very far north of New Zealand. But I also whakapapa, or my genealogy takes me back also to Tūhoi in the central part of the North Island, and then back to Ngāti Tama around the Taihape area where I grew up.
Beautiful. So I would like to start from the beginning, and you mentioned where you were born. So I'm curious how is it to grow up with the Maori culture? Because, for example, in the Western culture, how I grew up, at least in Europe, we have certain traditions, and of course, each culture, each country has its own traditions. And me personally, I'm always fascinated by the Maori tradition, also the history, because there's a certain aspect when I at least observe, when I sense into the Maori culture, there's certain traditions which are very specific for the Maori culture, comparing, for example, to other Polynesian cultures. So maybe you can share a little bit about that. How was it to grow up in this way?
Well, I would say that for me, growing up, it sort of goes into a number of different phases. My mother is Pākehā, which is in Maori is of European descent, and her whakapapa or genealogy goes back to Wales and to Scotland. And my father's genealogy is, as I said, to Ngāti Kahu, which is our tribe. I think for a lot of New Zealanders also, like I'm not unusual, as I could probably best say that there is a number of I think a very high population of the people in New Zealand who identify themselves as Maori are in a very similar situation to me, who have very strong genealogies on both sides of their parentage, often coming from a European side and also from the Maori side as well. So for me, it was always a very simple, it was a very simple upbringing, because the Maori culture itself was at different phases in my life prioritized, but then in other phases in my life it was set back based on based on where I was and what I was doing. But I think one of the things that differentiates Maori from pretty much in any other indigenous culture is the fact that as a race, we've always had this ability to step comfortably between two worlds. So we've been able to step comfortably, excuse me, been able to step comfortably between the European world and the Maori world, and our ability to flow evenly between each of these worlds comes down to our ability to navigate the various sort of rituals and traditions of both cultures, but also identifying the things that we have in common. And I think that that's probably one of the strengths for that we as Maori have, and that also transfers over to our experiences in life. And what we often find is that as we grow up, our upbringing is tested as we move through different phases, and the fact that we actually have two different cultures um, allows us to actually to bridge the challenges along the way, and gives us the opportunity to actually feel more comfortable and stronger in the process and ideologies that we have. So so for me, I had a very normal upbringing as such. At the beginning of my life, it was there was some trauma in relation to the parental relationship, and that changed over time. And it wasn't really until my teenage years that I fully understood my connection to the Maori culture, although I had always been connected to it in small part during my whole life. Um, but it was in my teens where things began to be more prioritized, um, and so it was. But it was also there where a lot of decision making was made in relation to my future. But the Maori culture played a very strong role in that decision making process. But I think that's very normal. I think for a lot of young Maori in New Zealand, um, who've been brought up in bicultural families. Uh, but we all have challenges in that sense. But I think we also, within those challenges, there's also a lot of areas to be strong, to be able to maintain some safety and stability. But also, as Maoris are a warrior race, to actually to go out and challenge status quo, to go out and actually go on and take on challenges, for example, that maybe are put off to later in life, because we have that ability, and as Maori, we're very curious about how to take on and to build our lives into to find our purpose. So I think that's really the way. Yeah. So I think that's really the way that I've been brought up.
Beautiful. And I'm curious when you speak about, for example, even the word warrior nowadays, how we translate the word warrior, because it's, of course, we still have wars around the world and conflict is still occurring, but specifically the word warrior, I'm always curious about how does that translate to the modern age of a man, because we mostly now can uh, just go to the shop and buy the food. We don't need to go hunting, correct? So we also don't need to carry weapons as we used to. So the times have changed. Yet what I am curious in connection also to men's work and your perspective on the Maori culture, how how did you say a modern man can approach or nourish the warrior energy within, even though it expresses externally perhaps differently?
Mm.
Because I do feel it's very important to nourish this energy, to have it, because it can be translated and
Yeah.
channeled in a different way. But how do you see that the Maori culture or yourself
Mm.
do that?
So I think it's really important when we make a consideration about the word warrior, um, that we are very clear about what we're talking about, because in the Maori world, back in ancient times, the idea of being a warrior was a person that was tested. So, for example, you could be a warrior in a warlike situation. You could be a warrior um, as a philanthropist for your tribe. That there are lots of different ways of being able to do that. And the idea of the warrior ethos was that we were able to overcome and surmount different challenges. And for Maori, how we did that often, obviously, we were in previous generations a warlike nation, but we were a warlike nation not for the fact that we would like to go to war or the fact that we like to be in battle, but the reality at the end of the day was our main priority was to survive. So the warrior was about having the underlying basis of survival as our main focus. Then what we did was we prepared ourselves to be able to take steps to ensure that our survival took place. So that meant that we actually had to go and look at not only our physical attributes and the way that we were physically, and the way that we prepared ourselves, using weapons and other protection devices, but also we had to look at the way that we strategized, the way that we used tactics, the way that we integrated and communicated across our tribe. And in looking back, we would find that even though some of our greatest warriors had uh, incredible skills when it came to weapons, the reality at the end of the day was the reason why they had those skills was the fact that we were able to maintain a very strong and clear balance between the masculine solution driven ideologies and the feminine process driven ideologies. And so that meant that our greatest warriors were the ones who could integrate the masculine and the feminine together. And I actually don't think that's changed. I think that we've been in today's world, we're in a situation where um, masculinity as a general term has been attacked and has been under attack for a number of years, and the ability of of men to fully understand and realize their true purpose in life has been tempered by the way they've been brought up, the way society has treated them in a manner that basically negates their true inner DNA. And I don't say that this is a thing that, for example, that we're talking about violence. We're not talking about that. But what I'm talking about is the idea that we are solution driven. We are a type that enjoys finding challenges, who enjoys finding problems, and we like to solve those problems. And men in olden days, their ability, the first thing they would do is they would look at it, they would assess it, they would find out what they need, they would then take on the skills, or they would build the skills or learn the skills, and then they would solve it, and then they would take those skills and pass them on into the new realm. And I think that's exactly where we're at now, is the fact that we've forgotten how to be able to not only assess what we are as men, but also take how do we retool again. And this is something that I think that we can that in today's world, that looking back into our history, looking back into the depths of our storytelling, that we can actually learn again as men, and through connection with indigenous culture, and in this particular term specifically the Maori culture, we actually have specific examples of how that is. And part of the work that I do, and part of the work that we'll be working on together, is actually being able to actually tell that story and actually bring that learning and knowledge further, to remind and to reconnect and to re-engineer the thinking processes of men, so that they have that opportunity to step into those strong, effective leadership roles again. And I think that's what's been lacking, and I think that's where we can really begin to redefine our ability as men to 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 be really strong partners, fathers, brothers, and to go that way. So that's really where those connection comes in.
Mm. Yeah, especially the last piece that you shared, how to be good fathers, good brothers, good partners, husbands. I feel this is an important piece, because that's why I asked you in the beginning, the warrior energy itself. I, you know, like I said, when often that word is said, maybe it's misunderstood, and maybe I know actually for some it's associated to something that is more violent, that is more negative. Yet I found, especially through Eastern cultures that I at least personally studied, and also even when I lived in the Amazon with a native tribe, the warrior energy is very, very important, because again, how it's translated, it can be translated into leadership in a tribe as the chief, as also in the family, for various of aspects. It doesn't need to be necessarily that energy as some form of physical violent thing. No, I find that energy crucial to needing to, when making decisions, when a bit unstable or uncertain within, in its own command score, for whatever purpose and reason. And for example, the warrior energy is also often called the dark masculine energy, depending on the teachings. In Tibet, they have a certain way of thinking about this, and this is one of the where that I'll use for now, the dark masculine energy, where we have the masculine energy, the dark, they refer as something more in the body, in the flesh, and connected to the earth. Because in the Western world, we see often the dark is defined as something bad, negative,
Yep.
whatever. But I find dark the cradle, the womb, the Mother Earth, the connection to nature. And I do see often, again and again, when men are disconnected from that energy, they often feel very disempowered. They feel, uh, I would even use the word impotent in so many ways, impotent to bring their energy forward into the world and to build whatever they want to build.
Yeah.
So I do feel that energy, as much as it's being vilified and demonized at the same time, it's absolutely necessary for a man to have so he can move forward and really live the life that he wants to live.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that we often underestimate is the fact that quite often our greatest promotions or our greatest steps are found in the dark. And in Maori we talk about, it goes I te timatanga ko te kore. In the beginning there was darkness, and so the reality at the end of the day is that we come from dark. So and again at the end, we go to darkness again in the end. And during so for us to understand that there is an innate fearfulness, because we don't really know where we come from, sort of in the beginning parts of our consciousness, and we don't really know where we go at the end parts of our consciousness either. So the idea that we have an innate fearfulness of the darkness is very understandable. But I think it's very important also to understand that that what we do have, and which is very, very important in the sense, is the fact that this energy is completely balanceable. So we can balance that energy very, very quickly. And it's completely understandable that men will look at the word warrior, or look at the ideology of what a warrior is, and some will find that it doesn't resonate with them. But I'd like to put something across, maybe that people haven't really understood. But the fact of the matter is that I always say to the people that I work with, you need to understand, you don't need to try to be a warrior, because you already are. And the reason why you already are is because generations and generations of people have fought so you can be here today. So it's inside your DNA. It's not that you don't know how to be a warrior. It's just you've forgotten how to be it. And so this is the thing about it, is that it doesn't make it. It doesn't mean that it has to be an intensive, traumatic introduction or rebirth into the warrior energy or power. Because the reality at the end of the day is, we as human beings, we can make a choice, and we can choose which pieces of that are valuable for us. And we can also ignore the pieces, some for example, that don't resonate with the processes that we have. But as long as we understand that they're still there, and we acknowledge the fact that they're still there, then we've taken them into consideration, and we've made a choice. We've made a choice to evolve ourselves in a manner that is fluent with the energies and spirits of the warrior ethic, that feel comfortable to us. So so when we do haka, for example, um, then what often happens in that situation is, very, very quickly, is the fact um, that people may actually be on, like, multiple different planes. You might have people who are feeling very traumatic. You may have feel people who feel very energized. But the reality is, when you're standing together in solidarity, in a oneness, and united, that energy permeates between levels, and it finds a balance. So the ones that, for example, who are struggling within the haka world, they become embraced. They are heard, they are seen, they are lifted into the group and supported. Those who have lots of energy, and those who are pushing the boundaries through their vocalization and their verbal input, they lead the process, and provide a flagpole to rally the rest of the group that's with them. So so in the warrior world, there's a place for everyone, and because everybody is at a different stage of the journey, and one shouldn't feel fearful about going into those dark places, especially the unknown, because that's exactly where you're going to find not only insight, but you're also going to find understanding and knowledge that perhaps can move you forward. Because if you haven't been there before and things aren't working for you in the world of light, where do you go? To the world, go into the world of dark, and see if there are tools that you can use in there. And it's my experience that when men embrace that side and find the balance, that all of a sudden everything changes. It just becomes so joyous, right? And I love being in that space.
Sounds like the marriage of the masculine and feminine and the light and the dark and the meeting in the middle, finding your own unique balance moment to moment.
Yeah.
And that also reminds me of the quote, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in war. And that always reminds me of my friends in martial arts, because I did a lot of martial arts in my life. And martial artists, I have to say, one of the most loving and caring and peaceful, calm people I ever met. And these people I really trust, because if you see them on the mat, they have the capacity to destroy, they have the capacity to kill. They know how to do it. Their bodies become a weapon, but because they master the control, self-understanding, how to use that weapon, they become very safe to be around with. So the philosophy of the gardener in war is the it's how I see it. It's better to have that knowledge of know how to use your body, to know how to use weaponry also, than not, because life will challenge. Life will bring one way or another. It's going to bring challenges at us. So as much as I am a peaceful person, I know the value of connecting to that dark, connecting to that power, connecting to the source, the roots, which I know that I will be ready for anything. And that does not mean a physical attack. I mean, it can be, but it means any life challenge, from, it can be even an illness, it can be a struggle in a relationship, it can be at work, any problem that we have. So solving those problems by approaching it from a perspective of, hey, I can still breathe with this. I can still feel calm. I can respond instead of react. I feel, for me at least, is one of the important warrior aspects of what does it mean to be a modern warrior nowadays. So we don't need to go to battle, but we still have a lot of battles to fight. Inner
Yeah.
battles more often.
Well, often one of the interesting things for me is that um, obviously the first connection that many people have to the ancient tradition or the ancient ritual of the Maori Haka is obviously through rugby and through our New Zealand All Blacks, who perform it before each international game. And I think that one of the things that is really interesting is that we we often look at things only in a sort of a 2D way. So what's being presented is what we take into our bodies, and and that's totally understandable, because if we're only being presented one angle, or one level, or one dimension, then it's very understandable that that's all we're going to get. And I can completely understand. Like, I've had many situations where people I've come to work with have said to me afterwards, because, wow, we saw the haka on social media, but it's a completely different feeling to what we thought it was going to be. So the best way I can explain that is by actually breaking it down into two terms. So the word haka isn't one word; it's actually two words that are put together. The first word is ha, and ha is the breath of life. It's to be calm, it's to be in control, it's to have the ability to be soft, to be sensitive, to take on board, to be intuitive. It's a state that allows for your senses to be connected. On the other side of the scale, we have ka, and ka means to set on fire, to explode, to be a place of to be a place of enlightenment, of change. And what I often say as part of it is that the word haka, when we bring these two words together, it's purposeful that there is nothing in between. Because in the Maori world in old times, we would go from being in a state of bliss, of being comfortable, um, of being safe, and then all of a sudden, just at the strike of a match or the strike of something, boom, the warrior came up, and then they were in that survival role. So so basically, if we can sort of iterate that over to the Western world, then what we're saying is that to go from that state of being, to go from that state of safety to that state of empowerment and strength, you don't need that decision making process in the middle. You just do. Because if you go into that decision making process in the middle, what is in te kore, in the darkness, in the middle between there? It's fear, it's doubt, it's misunderstanding, it's miscommunication. So you have all of those things in the middle, and that's where often in the Western world we try to phase our way through solution making. That we phase ourselves into it rather than just saying to ourselves, I'm going to take on, I'm going to do something, I want to do this now, I'm going to make that decision to do this now, I'm going to arm myself, I'm going to make it a habit. And so if we do that, like we do in the Maori world, then what we do is we begin to eliminate the things that actually hold us back, which are the fear and the uncertainty and the doubt and those types of things. And that's why haka is what it is, because it changes people's alignment from one state to the other state, and it actually shows people that they can do that in any type of thing that they want to do with their lives, whether it's decision making, whether it's whatever phase of their processes that they are, that it actually shows that they can skip all of the other areas as long as they make that decision to make that move. And that's why haka is such an incredible tool to not only share but also just to experience. It's not only powerful, but it's insightful and sensitive and strong and resourceful, and it unites us. It builds our energy. But at the end of the day, what it does is it provides us with an insight we can take away and use in our everyday life.
That puts me back to a moment where I did my first time when I did haka in a big group, a really big group of men. And it was a men's retreat on one part of the center, and then there was a women's retreat on the other side. So at the end of the retreat, during the retreat, of course, we practiced. We did the classical one, we did kamate together. And we brought it in the end as a gift. We entered the women's space and we brought the haka unity and brotherhood and the kamate, we brought it to the women. And the woman part was just to sit and receive fully. And I remember how beautiful that moment was, where all the men stood together side by side, and just bringing that really expression to the woman. And I remember the women were crying. They were so, even now thinking about it, it gets me emotional, because it was such a powerful moment to feel, also for men to experience, hey, this energy is not just welcomed, but it's also something that I saw so many times the feminine, or in the feminine in women, is longing for so much to experience, to feel from the man in front of them, and they just feel safe. Suddenly all these women started crying and just like melting down and feeling, I can actually feel safe around men. I can receive him fully. So their bodies were so open to it that men finally understood, like, actually I can bring myself fully without holding back. And this energy, not just in this retreat, I see it in a daily life where women are longing so deeply for the men to embody this energy, to live this energy, and to bring it to them in their relationships, in their lovemaking, in their decision making, and really just to feel in the world the man finally can bring this in. And I feel this is an important point, because often men are afraid to bring this energy, of thinking that the woman actually don't want this. They think it's a negative energy and bad. And sure, that exists too. But deep down, every time I saw this energy being brought, and specifically now with the Haka in this moment, I saw the woman. It feels so. It's like nourishment to the woman in that moment.
I think also that like over many generations, the role of the woman in when it comes to haka was that of a was either that of a supporting role, where they use their voices, and they use their body actions, but they maintain a sense of elegance. So the idea, for example, of protruding the tongue forward, or poking the tongue out, which we call a pukana, that's indicative of the male genitalia. So if a woman, for example, wouldn't use that because that doesn't align with her own physical characteristics. And also, but what they do is that, for example, we talk about when a woman will stand in empowerment and strength within the ritual of the haka, and she opens her eyes widely and protrudes a sense of revolution, basically, by using her face in a sense like this, and looking forward. The wider her eyes are in the Maori culture, through her eyes we see the future. So our women blaze a light and provide light on the circumstance, and they empower the men to step forward into that role. Um, but their role in the haka is also very, very important, um, as protagonists, but also as supporters, as instigators quite often, because we can't, in the Maori world, for example, if we have a visit from a tribe or from another group, um, the festivities or the intricacies of the ceremony can't go forward until such time as our females call the females from the visiting group to come forward. And if that doesn't happen, then there's no visit. So so we have situations where the energy is obviously shared. I certainly acknowledge the situation that you were in, and I think that's a very, very good example of men moving gracefully into that leadership role, because a it's not that a woman is not capable, and it's not that a woman is not equal to a man, because in the Maori world, women and men are 100% equal. But we just have different jobs. We just do different things, and it's not necessarily because it's gender driven, but it's done in a sense because we our role is to be the best that we can be to support the survival of the tribe. And and in old times, in ancient times, in tribes, there was no ego, because the best ideas were passed from person to person, and then were brought forward, so that every idea had value, and each idea contributed to the ability for the tribe again to survive. So you could be working in the fields, or you could be the one who was carving all of the weapons, but your ideas and everything that came with those ideas were equal, because you all had the same sense of inevitability, that if that everything was about survival. Um, so I think that we have uh, I think that we have, in a lot of cases, especially a lot of men, they have forgotten what it feels like to actually embrace that energy from others, to not only embrace the energy from others, but then to communicate their energy into their lives, into their relationships. And part of that comes down to communication. And communication, in a sense, is actually something that is at the absolute foundation of haka, because you're communicating verbally, you're communicating mentally, uh, you're also communicating physically, you're communicating space wise, you're ensuring that everybody has the right space. So there's all of our senses are being used. So we're basically we're re-engineering and reigniting those things that have been lost in today's normal world. And the key really, once you've got an understanding of how that works, the key is to provide tools and to provide challenges within those tools to have people go out into the world and begin to use those ancient tools um, in today's world, and they work. They work very, very comfortably.
This is also what I wanted to ask you, your perspective on something that I'm noticing a lot, and there's also statistically plenty of information nowadays that men struggle in different ways. The men struggle with their mental health, depression. The sad data is also that men, I think every second man, if I heard in the UK, haven't had intimate relation with a woman for the last 1-2 years.
Mm,
So they're struggling to have to meet partners. They're struggling to express themselves, how they feel, what they want, and suicide rates are really skyrocketing the last few years, especially.
yeah.
And this is for me painful to know, and this is also one of the reasons why I do men's work, because I want to support men to really see themselves from a different angle, and try to see their beauty, to try to see their strength, try to see their potential and all these things they have naturally have. And I'm curious, what do you think today? Why do men struggle today, especially in connection to their masculinity? Because we are speaking of specific archetypal energies, for example, the warrior, and I do see again and again men are struggling to express this, to meet this,
Mm,
and to often even answer the simple question to themselves, like, what does it mean to be a man
mm,
nowadays? What does it mean to provide, to protect, to be a man in nowadays? So I'm
mm.
just curious your perspective on this topic and masculinity overall, and the approach of maybe the view of masculinity, for example, in the Maori culture. How does that portray perhaps in the Western world, and how can Haka bring that, for example, more alive?
Sure.
I hope it makes sense, the
So,
question.
yep, it does. So let me start with. I'm going to start at the beginning and then move my way through as following the flow of your question. So there are two things that are, I think, challenging for us as men in the men, sort of developing an understanding of masculinity, but also developing an understanding of how to actually maintain our what we call ihi, or our sort of our essence of being men. So the first thing is this: is that even now, like, there are some amazing men's work going on out there. Like, I'm not going to say that there isn't, because I know that there's a lot of men who have been helped. There are a lot of men who have found solace and support in a lot of the types of men's work that are out there, and I completely applaud that. Um, but I will say, for myself, a lot of that just doesn't work. Like, for me personally, I can look at a lot of the men's work that's out there, and although I can understand that some of this has been around for quite a while, and it's something that's been followed and it's tried and true, men, we are as much traditional as we are entrepreneurial. So our ability to actually look at saying, yes, there's some traditional things out there that work, but they don't work for everybody. And I think the reality at the end of the day is that the what we're being asked to do in men's work often now is to talk. Now, the reason why we've been asked to talk comes from the idea that in a feminine circle, or in a feminine ability to communicate, the ability to talk and to share ideas, to share challenges, to share experiences, is something that a within the feminine energy is something that aligns directly to that. For men, what's also important is we can talk, but we're much more focused on action. So actions for us devolve us we devolve ourselves into situations by actually taking action and actually looking at things. And quite often, what we find is the fact that not only are we in a situation where we're being asked to solve our own challenges by using a language that we don't necessarily understand or actually really want to take on board, but we're actually being told that if we don't do it this way, then we're not entering ourselves into the realm where we can be where we can communicate with our partners, or we can bring them into our energy. I just don't believe that at all. I think that's I my my understanding of this is that that may be the case in certain points, but I believe that a man's ability to find solutions can be can be manifested in a manner that feels natural and it feels logical for us as men. But what it does do also is that we can also take in, once we have that logical state in place, we can then begin to take on board other things, for example, that we can integrate into those things that are natural for us. So I think we need to sort ourselves out first. We need to sort our own abilities to be able to just make decisions, to take action, and then build clarity to that. And then at that point, then begin to take other essences on board that can strengthen and add color um, and as a nuance to our ability to communicate and to add. Because what we do then, rather than coming from a base that has been set aside for us by, I won't say femininity, but from a position that we aren't necessarily comfortable with, we're instead coming from a state of strength, of empowerment, of confidence, where we then, like you're learning a new language, take on the ideologies of saying, how do I communicate better in this new state while still maintaining my sense of self? And I think that in the Maori world, this is something that has always been accepted, that men have always done things by action. But on the other side of the coin, women have also done things by action, but they've also incorporated not only the action part, which is obviously their contribution to the tribe, but they've also maintained their own circles, within their circles where they can still have those feminine discussions, they can still have those feminine contacts and connections. Whereas men have also been able to communicate because they feel comfortable and strong within themselves. And that's really what it comes down to. And I think Haka is a like many other tools, is something that can be used um, to actually show and visibly give people that opportunity to actually dive directly into taking action. Because as I stated before, we're looking at not only physical action but verbal, um, social interaction, spatial interaction. Everything is about action in that sense. But when we finish the haka, we feel like we've achieved. And once we achieve, we're ready to communicate that. We're ready to talk about that. And the thing about it is that even for those people, for example, who are still in a state of disarray, of trauma, of feeling undervalued, or feeling weakened, they still are in a situation where they have been able to take on a certain amount of energy and be seen by the group and then embraced by the group and given them the opportunity to actually verbalize how they're feeling. And that's why haka is so encompassing, because it gives everybody an opportunity to be seen and to open themselves up. But there's a lot of work to be done. And I think that it also comes down to practitioners like yourself and me, and to not only, as I said to you, like, I support the work that other men do, but there are alternatives, and I think the alternatives have often been pushed to the side, because people don't understand how to teach them. And and I think if you don't know how to teach something, if you don't know how to do something, and they say if you don't know how to do something, teach it. But the reality is, in this particular case, is that you know you can't teach it if you don't know how to do it. And so and so for men to be able to pass on knowledge about how to be strong, comfortable, confident men, then they have to learn to go through that. They have to go through that trauma. They have to go through that power. They have to go through those dark places to get there. And then once they've learned how to go through that, that's how we communicate. That's how we pass that on, and that's how we become. That's how we become better at allowing ourselves to be more vulnerable, because we feel confident in our ability to, to be seen. And if we're not in a place where we can be seen, we won't be vulnerable.
Yeah, that reminds me of my own journey of exploring, or what we spoke in the beginning, integrating the masculine and feminine energies, and what does it actually mean. And I've had a lot of discussions, and I want to remain open to the possibilities of what does it mean to integrate both masculine and feminine within, because from my experience, men have a masculine core, that's our essence, that energy, and at the same time we have the access, and it can be of course practiced and access in different ways, to how to sense our own feminine energy, and at the same time it's expressed differently. So my feminine is very much differently than expressed than in a woman. I know that in my own relationship. So this dance was always very interesting, how to balance with it. And then like you shared before, I, I do still feel men, I cannot speak for every man, but I do see it often that men do not communicate their emotions the same way women do. It's just a different expression. Like you said, perhaps for us, it's more through action, and then access to that energy. For some of us, and I can speak for myself, sometimes just to create that momentum, to move and to do, I would say in a healthy way, that often creates the energy shift that I'm looking for, instead of just speaking it out, which is often is just like vomiting. It doesn't always work. It sometimes that just feels a bit like that. So I know that also in relationships, it's very important how to navigate that, because if both parties would express verbally in a feminine way, there's not a lot of space very often for the woman to be fully in who she is, because also the man is taking that space. And so I would say, even though both men and women have both access to masculine and feminine, we connect to it differently, we express to it differently. And for the men, again, what I see again and again and again, for them to connect to the masculine essence is often the most direct and very clear way through, to meet themselves, and also to lead to also to connect to their partners, and not often through words. Words often fail us at the beginning. Even if you're eloquent and clear, you still can fail very easily.
Of the warrior. And she said to me, she goes, but understand that the greatest test of a warrior is to dive into that which is unknown, but which is also sensitive. And I said to her, so, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, the reality at the end of the day is that when the thing that a man fears most often is upsetting or hurting their partner or their family, or doing something like that. And so often they will push themselves away from decisions or from actions that will put them into potential conflict in those areas. But as part of being a leader, you have to still be able to be vulnerable, and you have to be able to take on a sense of transparency. And the ability to be transparent in any situation is perhaps the greatest tool a warrior can have, because what that does is it means as soon as you are transparent, you invite other people to be transparent as well, and then they teach you their language. And so I can say, like, a couple of years ago, I was in a situation where I was coming out of like a very, very long relationship, and I was very aware of the of the trauma and sort of sadness that came from coming out of this relationship. And then I moved at some point around about 6 months later. I moved into another relationship where basically the only term that she said to me was that I have to be transparent. You have to be fully transparent in this relationship, or I'm getting involved. And I said to her, of course. And then my next question was, well, what's transparency? and and she and then she began to sort of introduce me to the concept of transparency in a feminine way. Um, and then I was able to sort of transform part of that into how I was in a masculine way as well. Um, but it comes down to, like, transparency comes down to also a sense of personal integrity by being honest with yourself, being honest with your partner, being honest with those people that are around you, but also not, but also being honest in times of challenge as well as times of success. So, even in situations where there is a certain amount of uncertainty, that being uncertain itself isn't necessarily a weakness, but being uncertain and continuing to stay in that state because you don't, because your ego impacts you from not asking for assistance to find your way through that. That is basically that places you in a situation that's not tenable. Um, like, so I no, I completely, I completely agree with, with your, with the way that you explained it and described it, because I think that we are in a situation now where, um, it's okay to understand that we speak different languages. It's and we always have, but the reality at the end of the day is there has to be times where, as a man, sometimes you need to lead yourself into those spaces, and the way to go into those spaces is by taking on those masculine effects, those feminine effects of being more vulnerable and being more sensitive. So, but I see that as completely. I see that as being a very powerful thing, and and Haka again is one of those very, very strong pathways that offers an insight, and actually an actionable insight, and prototypes your connections and your reactions to going deep into those things. And yes, I'm really looking forward to I'm really looking forward to adding some of those essences into our learnings and teachings here when we meet with our group.
Yeah, before I switch to the next segment about our event that is coming, uh, I remember when I was living in the jungle with a native tribe, and I met a few warriors that they have, because they have a specific tradition of initiation for the warriors, specifically warriors in the tribe, and they have like a 3-month dieta, which is to start this warrior diet, you have to find a specific snake in the jungle. I think you have 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. You have to find it, and you have to bring it back. You have to kill it.
Yep.
And it's very difficult. You have to be alone in the jungle. You have to find it, which is very, very difficult, because it's a very small snake. The jungle is vast, and so only the one who actually finds the snake can begin with the diet, which lasts around 3 months.
Okay.
And it's an interesting energy the men come out of that diet. Mm-hmm. And the specific warrior that was in my little area where I lived, he was taking care of me and the others who were there as foreigners. And he carries such a unique, I would say, sensitivity in him, because to hunt, especially in the jungle, there's so many colors and details and shapes. So for the warrior to see, for example, if he's hunting an animal, he has to be so attuned to his own body, to, I would say, sensations, the visual ones, the hearing ones, and just an inner gut instinct. So I would say the warrior has to be hypersensitive, actually. So he's not disconnected from his feelings and emotions, and he's actually very, very much connected to that. So he can be attuned to the space of where is the danger, where is what he needs to hunt. And there was a moment to one of the people I was with, he was taking a bath in the river, and he did not see that a huge, very aggressive snake was going through the water towards him. So there's a specific snake that was very aggressive there. And this warrior, from a distance, I would say probably around 20, 30 meters, I haven't been there, but I heard the story. I was close. he literally boom shot the snake dead in the head from that distance.
Mm.
But for him to be attuned to feel that that snake is actually coming to him, to aim, to hit, to feel it's a real practice of sensitivity to the
Yep.
man's body. And I would say this is a masculine, perhaps a man's masculine way to connect to his emotions and sensitivity as a warrior. It's different than a woman, I would say,
Mm.
in its own unique, beautiful way. But there is a sensitivity a warrior must carry for him to be in connection to his heart and being able to penetrate, to hit, to kill, to protect when needed.
Well, I've also talked about, like, I mean, if you go back in history, the teachings have always been that the greatest warriors are the ones who have control and are calm. Because when you get into those heating, when you use emotions in battle, then you're taking away from your ability to fully connect to that situation and really and take on board that enhanced emotional state. And but I think that, like in the Maori world, um, when you become a young man, um, there were there were certain initiations that took place. Partly, like, for example, uh, like mostly tattoos. It was mostly that was the big thing. So as you began to get older, you began to take on tattoos, and it wasn't until you reached the stage of what we call tohunga whakairo, which is a knowledgeable elder, where they began to take on mataora, which is tattoos on the face. Um, but we're also seeing now, for example, in New Zealand, that as a resurgence of the culture comes, we're seeing more and more young women, for example, taking on the moko here on the chin. Yeah, and so you're seeing young women right down to the age of, 15, 16 years old, beginning to take on the moko. And it really comes down to um, your own personal commitment to the culture, and how you've been brought up, and how you've been connected to it. But because but now, for example, just because you don't have a tattoo or something like that doesn't mean that you aren't still like valued um, for your contribution to the tribe. And um, but what often would happen, for example, also like now, for example, is like, if you look at it, the reality at the end of the day is that every young man and young woman is expected to be a warrior. It's not there's not, but not necessarily in the traditional sense of warrior physical, or warrior through battle, but to be a warrior, to fight for our language, to fight for our culture, to fight for our rituals and our traditions, to fight for connection to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, our founding document. Um, we're basically, at the present time in New Zealand, we're basically in battle mode, because the everything that's happening with our government and so on is placing us in a situation where these things that we hold dear, these things and connections to our culture, are being attacked. So so we're seeing young men and young women assume those warrior roles again, and it actually has redefined the way, it's actually gone back to redefining or reconnecting us to the ways of old times. When tribes used to fight each other, because people are assuming those roles again, and it's obviously very it's traumatic, it's tough, but it's also very beautiful as well. So yeah, but it's awesome. Like, just the whole connection of being a warrior, um, and making that decision that you're going to take on your life as a proactive warrior, rather than being as like a person that will sit back and just let life overtake them as it is. Um, that's you know There's respect for every human being as it is, but it's a very different mindset. And I think that men if they choose the latter, it's because they probably haven't experienced the former. So that they haven't actually experienced what it can be like to actually embrace those powerful things. And that's what I hope that people who will join us will, in a lot of cases, who are sort of looking for solutions, looking for pathways, that they'll come, and when they come through this process, they'll really get to actually understand how powerful taking those steps are.
That is something that I see over and over again across the world. There's a return of tradition and ritual
Mm,
from various traditions, and even in the jungle where I live, the tradition of the plant medicine.
mm,
This specific tribe where I lived with, they have a big history on, as they call it, the white man came and they almost killed the whole tribe. And
yeah,
their story is one of rebirth. So the whole tribe took them a long time to be again, to be above 1,000 members.
yep,
And their path now, they say they want to bring the plant medicine back to the world and to forgive the white man for everything that happened in the past. So you see from different traditions, the rituals are coming back and they're becoming even mainstream,
yep,
these kind of things. And I find it beautiful. Of course, there's always a question of who's doing it, how they're doing it. But I do see there's a longing, deep longing within the human to come back to the roots and come back to that connection to nature, I would say. Come
yeah,
back to the self is the connection to nature, and that return home to to be done from what I see together as a tribe. We're walking each other home as men, as women, as human beings.
mm,
So Haka, in that sense, I feel is one of those paths and one of those roads
yep.
which points of how can we bring each other back together as a tribe, as a family, and really walk together home. So I'm curious for this last part of our connection and call, the coming event we are doing together. For the people who don't know, it's called Haka 100 Men Strong. It's going to happen in Amsterdam in 2 weeks, on the 10th of February. And you, Kane, you're coming to Amsterdam. We're going to have a full day of only men on this occasion coming together to really explore men's work and Haka. And I'm curious, besides the Haka that probably many people see, if they haven't, I will also share some links below you can see. But what would you say about this event? How, like, besides the Haka, like the tradition, for example, of rituals and ceremony, how does that also look like and come together in this event and in this work?
So the most important thing is the fact that there are three things that are really, really important um, in when we are going into the world of haka. The first thing is that basically you can't get it wrong, because the reality at the end of the day is what you're bringing is you're bringing your own energy, you're bringing your own ability to connect. You're choosing what in what manner you want to be part of the event. Um, Whether you remember the actions or remember the words, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that you just try to maintain that energy, and you can do that by connecting to the people that are beside you. The second thing is that it's in the Maori language, and but don't be concerned about that, because the Maori language is actually one of the it's not only, apart from being a very beautiful language, it's actually a very, very easy language to speak, and it's actually a very easy language to learn. And the haka will be fully you have a full understanding of what you're doing, what each word means, what each action means, so that you can align yourself with that. And the last thing is the most important thing, is that the way that we develop it is that no one's going to push you, no one's going to pull you in, no one's going to bully you or judge you, because you have the opportunity to attach yourself to that part of the session in a manner that feels comfortable to you. Because the most important thing is, if you're comfortable, then you're actually willing to invest yourself into to stepping forward and to moving forward. But I think that the most important thing that I'd like to sort of pass on from my side is the fact that although although what we're doing is seeded in the Maori culture, um, the majority of the things that we do come from a humanistic point of view. So they're actually things that we look at as human beings, that we assess as human beings, that we try to take on board as men, that give us a vision of who we are, of what we feel, and the key thing is that how this will be done is by looking at how Maori connect to their past, to the things that are important to them, to their relationships. It offers a mirror for you to do the same in your life, in your history, in your connections, and the generations of people that you've come from. So it gives you the opportunity to use the same tools and the same processes, but to actually delve deeply into your own past and be invited to do so. Some of you will, some of those people who will be attending will be really ready to jump in. Others may not be. Others may not be. But what it will do is, irrespective of that, when you leave our gathering, you'll have a toolbox that you can actually go home and begin to actually work through and uh, start to plot your own pathway. And that's effectively the most important thing, is that the the Maori side will connect you with the things that are already part of your inner sanctum, within your body, um, and what it will also do is also provide you with some tools and steps that will keep you maintained in an authentic way to your own history and the things that are important to you. So I think that's the big output at the end of the day of how we're going to do that, and then we're going to surround it with some incredible men's work that support, provide provide space, and again just really empower you to step into that new vision of yourself. And so the whole day itself is just going to be there's going to be lots of action involved. There's going to be lots of intention involved, and at the end of the day, you're going to walk away with a big basket full of incredible things that you can actually use, rather than just going away with a mind full of ideas and thoughts. We're actually going to say, take this away, and here's how you can use it. Go home, talk about it, and get underway.
Yeah, it's very exciting because I know the men that are also coming. Like you said, there's some who are very excited to jump in, and there's some who are feeling fear.
Mm.
And they're like, "Oh, how would that look like?" So the invitation is really to come with an open mind and to come with fear, not to even if there is fear, to come with it and allow
Yeah.
it to be in the space, because these kind of spaces, and especially because I've been getting questions like, why aren't there women like allowed? And I say, well, these are the spaces specifically created for men, so the men can come with certain things
Mm.
they might fear to bring into the world, to their partners, to women in space where there are women. So it's very important for the men to understand these are all permission spaces, and spaces where men are really allowed to be themselves and to bring whatever that is happening within.
Mm.
So come with joy, come with fear. It's all welcomed.
Yeah, and absolutely, and also, as we were talking about before, the idea that that often the thing that, between the heart and the car, the doubts and the fear and the misunderstanding, you if you make that decision to say, you know what, I'm going to go, I want to go from the state that I'm in, and I want to supercharge myself, I want to empower myself, or I just want to take one step, I just want to take one step forward, but I'm going to take that step boldly and strongly and with confidence and with purpose. So I don't need anything between the heart and the car. I don't need any of that grey space. I'm going to go from the darkness and the solitude and the relaxation place of ha into the light and power and flickering glow of car. But then once I've gone through that car, because I can't stay there the whole time, what I can then do is I can then retreat back into ha, because I now know how to get there. No matter what I do from this day forward, I now know how to go from ha to car, and then from car back to ha again. So I don't need to be fearful of diving into into difficult spaces or darkness, because as soon as I dive in there, if I can ignite the car, and the car from the firelight and the sparks will ignite and will shine for me in those dark places.
That's like the fire that has been in the center for thousands of years, where men would gather around this fire. This is the vision that I have when I hear that. And again, this reuniting of men coming together around the fire, telling stories.
Yep.
In this case, telling stories through Haka. This is really something that lights me up. So I'm really excited for the event. And is there something else that maybe before we close you want to share about the Haka event?
Yep. There's one last thing. So although you and I are hosts of this event, and I'm obviously very privileged and very honored to be in that role, we're going to also have 100 men who come with life stories and experiences, and as I said, some are going to be very much a long way along the pathway and have a very clear understanding of who they are, and you're going to have some gentlemen and people who are going to be coming along who are on their first step, who are really just trying to understand everything that's going to be required for them to delve into themselves. But what I will say is that every single man who's there is a teacher, as much as we are, and every single man who is there is a participant, as much as we are, because although it's our role to create the space, to create the impetus, to create the direction, we need people to fill the space. We need people to help move the direction in the way that's going to go. We need people to actually to drive the process along as well, and acknowledging each other's abilities in those areas, and to be able to quickly learn from each other. That's going to be the greatest. I think going to be probably one of the greatest things that you don't often find in sort of some in traditional men's work, is because like often it's very face forward. So you got a teacher and they're going to show you something, then you're going to do something. But here we're going. I don't know. All I know is that you and I, we have a toolbox, and within that toolbox we're going to go on with some ideas. And luckily our toolbox is pretty deep, because I'm guessing that by looking at the people that come, they're also going to challenge us, and they're going to and so so we are just as challenged, even though that we understand the process of what we want to do, or we have an idea of the process we want to do for the day. We're going to help people to not only sort of identify those things that for example that they can use as tools, but then also maybe one of the great things is like they're going to have time to connect with other people who have those tools, and say, and basically, and then it goes back to man helping man. How do we use our tools? How did it work for you? What happened? And again, at the end of the day, they're going to have that little bit of time to assess, and then actually seek out people who have things that, for example, that they need for themselves. And within vulnerability and transparency, they're going to have this encyclopedia of people, of knowledge, of history, of ideologies, of turning points that are going to be at their beck and call. So their ability to have this incredible network, their new tribe will be born on that day. So man, it's going to be unbelievable. I'm so looking forward to it.
New tribe will be born. So thank you so much for joining me today and being open to share your story, and also the story and the history of not just your own, but also of your tribe, of your country. And it's, I feel, when we look deep down into the roots, when we look down at the essence, I see the same stories are told across the world in their own way, and there's so much more connection that we have than what we think. Yep. So I'm really excited about this event, and I will share later in the show notes. So below you can see the link for everyone who haven't seen it, or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. You can also find that all the information. So Nemanyo Sonero. And also, where can everyone else find you? So besides our event, how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about Haka or yourself?
Sure. So I have the two easiest ways to contact me are also through Facebook. There's not that many Kanes in Facebook, so you can contact me through Facebook, and we'll have the details down below underneath here. But also, I also have a Facebook group, which is Haka Workshops with Kane Harnett. So you can go in there and see what's going on around Europe.
Beautiful. Thank you again, brother. I'll see you, and I'll see everyone listening on the 10th of February in Amsterdam. More information below, and see you at the Haka 100 Men Strong. Blessings.
You.